Cocaine Bear! So this isn't gonna be like a step-by-step rundown video as I often do because it's Cocaine Bear. I'm gonna start with my spoiler-free thoughts, then talk about the real story this is all based on because it is somehow based on a real story, then swing back around for some specific spoiler thoughts so you are safe for a while, but can you even spoil a movie called Cocaine Bear? Like, I feel like you know exactly what you're getting when you go into a movie with that kind of title. Though if you have managed to avoid all the trailers or the promotional information, I would continue to do that because a lot of those really big scenes, like some of the best scenes, are in the trailers, except some of the really gruesome stuff. And with a premise like a bear getting wrecked on drugs and then just like messing things up, like you were already pulling people in, but is it actually any good or is it just really relying on that premise? And that is probably gonna depend on the viewer. And I was super excited for this movie and it's one of those ones people just immediately started tagging me in the trailers and like the posters, likely due to my extremely well-known work with such classics as The Velocipaster. But I saw the title and knew I was gonna see it, so I just did everything I could to avoid the trailers and the promos until I went to see Knock at the Cabin and they played the trailer back to back twice, so I did pick up some residuals. And other than the titular character, this is just one of those movies loaded with semi to regularly familiar faces, including Alden Ehrenreich, aka Han Solo, who's about to be in a movie I loved called Fair Play, spoiler-free review link down below. But then you've got O'Shea Jackson Jr., the Lady Dexter Mercy killed that one time, Felicity, the kid from The Turning, the kid from Sweet Tooth, the gay dad from Modern Family, the corrupt senator from The Wire, and of course, Ray Liotta in what I believe to be the first like posthumous release movie that he's been involved in. I think he's got a few more on the way. But what is Cocaine Bear? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. A black bear gets hooked on a bunch of cocaine that was dropped out of a plane into the Georgia wilderness and starts wreaking havoc looking for a fix. Becomes a murderous psycho, if you will. But it's not just about a bear rampaging, which admittedly would get a little bit tired. You've got the people that the cocaine belongs to trying to get it back, the cop that's trying to stop that from happening, the park and wildlife rangers incidentally in the area and their local hooligans, and then some like random kids and their mom. And if that sounds messy, it is. It certainly doesn't come together like a Tarantino mixed cast with mixed motivation flick, but it's still a lot of fun in areas. But sadly to me, just not as funny as it should and could have been in areas, and it's just a little bit too wholesome in ways that it absolutely did not need to be and did not fit the vibe. I think it really just needed to tighten in and focus on certain characters, but I think I definitely had more fun watching this than Ant-Man 3. I also think the movie gets a little bit slow after the initial dumping of the cocaine. It has this whole scene with hikers that just, in my opinion, went on a little bit too long just to set up, hey, that bear sure is acting weird. Oh no, the bear is going to murder us. And then it just pushes out into 4 like little mini plots, and some of them are really good and interesting and then aren't focused on a lot. And then you've got the ones with like the kids getting lost in the woods and the mom trying to find them, and like it was just entirely too much. I personally think they should have just cut the mom and the kid storyline entirely. Like, there's definitely some funny moments with them, but definitely not enough to justify the amount of scenes they're used in. And if you want to keep some of those scenes, they don't even need to be properly introduced. Like, I know that this kid has a bad dad who forgets to make him lunches and won't notice if he goes to school or not. Why do I need to know that in a movie called Cocaine Bear? There's enough stuff going on with Ehrenreich's character that they could have used to drive a plot outside the literal cocaine bear. And when they infused that in, they at least found a way to make it funny. Because there was just way more they could have done with that section of character. Like, Ray Liotta deserved better. So focusing in more on Ehrenreich and Jackson's storyline with the cop and Liotta showing up probably would have just felt like a more satisfying movie. And I think the blonde kid had a lot of really fun and funny moments. It's just he went way too corny wholesome at the end. Because for some reason, this movie just wants to be more than what it needs to be. Trying to infuse all this stuff about friends and family and bonds, but it just goes about it in the worst possible way, in my opinion. Basically, when this is at an 11, it's fun, it's wild, it's good, and when it's not, it just feels very disjointed and disappointing. I don't think it gets overly gruesome outside of maybe 1 or 2 moments, but if you're sensitive to that, there are probably some scenes that will make you scream. But if you're into the premise and like wacky horror comedies, it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you can catch it with a crowd that's equally into it and maybe under the influence of some kind of substance. That probably would have helped. Because I saw this on the opening Thursday night with the people that should have been the most hyped for Cocaine Bear. And it didn't get nearly as many laughs as I expected and hoped it to. And it's not to say it's terrible, there are still a lot of really funny moments, there's some genuinely tense moments, there's genuine like, oh my god, oh shit moments. But it was all just a little bit too messy to be really effective. Which is unfortunate because there is a blast of a movie in here, I just think it needed a lot of revision because they're letting that premise do so much work. But hey, this is based on a real story, who am I to try to ask them to alter the reality of what really happened? But no. Yes, there is some truth behind this story, but obviously it's heavily dramatized. You kind of know it has to be because they'd never make this ridiculous over-the-top horror comedy of people just getting brutalized by a bear if it was like people who had actually been brutalized by a bear. But the setup, that is essentially the same. A former narcotics officer turned drug smuggler, Andrew C. Thornton II, dumps a bunch of cocaine that he's just smuggled from Colombia before being forced to evacuate his plane. But he almost instantly dies when his parachute fails to deploy, which opens up some deep criminal web, which is a super interesting story and not remotely focused on enough. And that's the only real death this movie covers, and yeah, they do still treat it like a joke, but it's presumably because they didn't feel bad making fun of a drug smuggler involved in a major scandal? Because that story alone was an entire phenomenon. It's the subject of an investigative true crime book called The Bluegrass Conspiracy because his death busted open a national scandal that extended into the US government. Honestly, a movie about that would be sick. Now I want to read the book, and maybe I'll make a whole video on that. And I guess his story specifically inspired an entire arc on the show Justified. But as that web is being untangled, 3 months after the drug dump, a black bear is found dead in the Georgia wilderness, reportedly filled to the brim with cocaine, earning him the name Pablo Escobear. And no one knows what happened to the bear in between the time of ingestion and death, but I assume not much considering it was found dead amongst the 40 ripped open containers loaded with drugs. But he just died, which is tragic. But then, because the doctor that examined the bear didn't want it to go to waste, he had it taxidermied and presented it to the Chattahoochee River National Recreational Area, where it then went missing? Yes, an entire taxidermied black bear went missing before turning up in a pawn shop, at one point allegedly ending up in the possession of Waylon Jennings, and eventually made its way to Lexington, Kentucky, where it now resides in the Kentucky for Kentucky Fun Mall, who were gracious enough to invite me out for a tour, but sadly I just couldn't fit a trip to Kentucky from Canada into my schedule, but maybe someday. Leave a like on the video if you want me to go to Kentucky and visit the Cocaine Bear. That mall seems great though. It literally exists to promote the kick-ass features and influence of Kentucky, which is making me appreciate Kentucky more than I ever thought I would. You just gotta love a brand that commits. So if you want to see the real Cocaine Bear, that's where he is, because it was a he apparently. The movie does change her to a lady, most likely so you can be like, oh no, where's the babies? Side note, I don't know why, but when I was imagining the taxidermied black bear that died from consuming too much cocaine, I was thinking it would have been taxidermied in an upright, like attack pose. But this is cute, they gave him a little hat. But that's pretty much it for the real story of Cocaine Bear. Obviously, a lot more reality occurred around the situation that resulted in the bear consuming cocaine. But I can absolutely see why someone saw this as an opportunity to make this ridiculous movie about a bear getting absolutely fucked. Which we will now swing back into. I'm gonna go over some more specific things I liked, things I didn't. So if you just want to experience this movie for yourself, then come back and compare notes, do that. But if you've already seen it or want to know if you should, stick around, aka spoilers. So like I said, I found this setup to be a little bit much. I love seeing Game of Thrones, dude, but the way it's set up all idyllic, I just kept waiting for something to fall out of the sky on them. But this is just this overly extended setup for them to stumble upon the bear. I personally feel like you could have expressed the vibe they were going to in like 30-second stop and then have the bear show up. And that might seem like a nitpick, but movies like this are all about pacing. So when you go from a dude hopped up on cocaine just yeeting millions of dollars of coke out of a plane to slowing right down with characters that don't really matter in the long run of the story, is needed tightening in my opinion. It then cuts to Kerry Russell in this totally non-drug related moment with her daughter, where I learned that she's interested in a doctor at work and that's why their weekend plans are changing so they can't go to the waterfall in the woods anymore. I understand the desire to want to set up why the kids were wandering out into the woods alone, but may I provide the counter that none of this was needed in the movie at all. If they're trying to go for the parallel of like Mama Bear and her babies and Mama Bear and her babies, it's kind of stupid because Mama Bear was more focused on cocaine. But yes, it is super fun to have a kid saying stuff like this.
A bear?
It was far!
Hey!
Bears can't climb trees.
Of course I can! Then why are you up here?
But most of their scenes collectively seriously detracted from the movie, in my opinion, especially when it worked into its conclusion. If there was just a way to have that kid and cut some of the fluff, it would be perfect. Which there definitely was. Let him be like the younger brother of one of those park hooligans, or one of the criminals' kids, or even the wilderness checkers' kid. I get that means he'd have to watch his own father die, but kid's already fucked, it's fine.
But it kind of seems like the thing that stays with a man forever.
Though I do love that this little girl instantly knew that that was a fat brick of cocaine when they stumbled on it. And then when they see the bear, they do the whole like don't move like Jurassic Park before it sneezes coke at them, which is kind of also like Jurassic Park. But the kids getting lost in the woods after getting attacked by the bear is obviously what sets up that whole story of the mom having to track them down. But to me, the story is most interesting when it's focused in on the guys trying to reclaim the drugs. So I was even okay getting background info on their lives because they at least made it kind of funny. Like Eddie here is the son of the drug kingpin Sidney White. Yes, like the Amanda Bynes movie. Apparently his wife or girlfriend just died, mother of his son, and he is a wreck. But they at least handled that funny. Like he had got a memorial tattoo for her, but instead of writing Joan, they wrote John. And he's got to wait like 7 days for it to heal enough to get the H turned into an A. Like, it's stupid, but it's funny. So Sid wants David here to get Eddie out of his funk by going and tracking down millions of dollars worth of cocaine in the Georgia wilderness. Otherwise, you know, cartel death. And their dynamic is great. Anytime we're with them is so fun because David is just fucking done with this day after the local hooligans jumped him in the bathroom so he got stabbed in the back. Then they get to cart this one through the woods because he admits that they found and stashed a bunch of cocaine. All that's great, and I loved it. I love the dynamic when the cop showed up to try to like take them down. It just leads to a lot of really fun back and forth, like Buddy getting 2 of his fingers shot off, but it's like not 2 that are together. The bear passing out on Eddie. It's just all really fun. But then it just keeps pulling back to the stuff with the kids, and like the only scene there that really worked for me is the one with the kid in the tree with the park rangers.
Did you feed it cocaine?
No?
Oh shit.
It's so goofy, but it's just dumb fun. And then like that kill scene is like really interesting because you just see the blood trickling down from above. Considering they couldn't make it look super realistic with the bear eating him, that was like the best way to handle it while leaving it feel tense. Then the whole scene back at the ranger cabin when Ranger Liz hobbles back after narrowly escaping death and accidentally shoots one of the hooligans trying to shoot the bear. Also really fun to see Scott Seiss in this. His retail TikToks are a gem. He's also featured in another movie that should come out this year called Shortcomings, linked to a spoiler-free review down below. And this whole scene is probably the most brutal in a couple different ways, from like the gunshot to the bear attack to like Liz falling out the back of the ambulance and getting like face drug on cement, like ouchie. And then Scott's wrist just like snapping off but not entirely. It's like they decided, okay, this is the scene, we're going all out. We're gonna have the bear keeping up with an ambulance going full feed. We're gonna have it jump in the ambulance. We're gonna have the ambulance crash into a tree, and we're gonna have the driver fly through the windshield. We are committing. Not to say it doesn't commit in other areas, but really everything from that ranger cabin to the ambulance is wild and ends up feeling like a real standout of the movie. Like this moment? So good. I also thought it was really fun when the kid that David and Eddie were using to find out where they stashed the drug, and he's like talking about how him and his pals are gonna move to New York, and it does kind of like a flash forward thing, but like his friends are dead as they currently are, so one of them's just like holding his own head in his hand, the other one's just kind of like brains are blown out. It's really creative, and it was really fun because he has no idea. And that's just what makes it disappointing when the whole package isn't as fun as it should have been. And one of the main things would just be cutting down on the sheer amount of focal points. Like just when you think no one else could possibly be showing up, someone new pops in. Which works sometimes, like with the ambulance, but then we find out that one of the other cops that was working with the cop dude was actually on Sid's side. But that doesn't even matter or amount to anything by the end. She might have been the one to tell Sid that this other cop was going to be sniffing around the woods for the cocaine, but that is literally something that could have been handled with a throwaway line when Sid showed up. And then once Sid's there, it really is just mission to find the cocaine. Because after being stabbed, having 2 fingers shot out, and having a bear pass out on you, David and Eddie are ready to cut their losses, but it's Sid's head on a platter if he doesn't get the money for those drugs, and then the cartel will just work their way down through the family line. It would have been so much fun to see more of that criminal side of things. So then I feel it just kind of really meanders into its ending. Like the mom and the kid find the daughter who for some stupid reason hid inside the bear cave. At first I was like, oh wow, she's kind of dumb to not realize that's the bear's den. But there's 2 cubs inside getting hooked on coke, so she absolutely knew the bigger bear was gonna have have to come back at some point. She was smart enough to leave a trail all throughout the woods and the mountains so that someone could find her, but not smart enough to stay out of the bear cave? Okay. Whatever, it's fine. They all end up in the bear cave either to save the kids or find the drugs. And it all comes to a head where Eddie and David refuse to shoot the cubs, thankfully, which just leads to that one kid going on this annoying, wholesome rant about fatherhood that they just should have cut. Movie took a whole dive bomb this scene. Before they all jump off the waterfall to get away from the bear, and Sid ends up disemboweled with the cubs feasting on his organs while trying to snag another duffel bag of coke. Sounds gruesome, but it looks so fake that you should be fine. So the bears live on happily and triumphantly until, you know, the coke runs out and they inevitably get hunted down for going on a massacre. But we just won't think about that. I'm sure we're gonna get a sequel. And everyone else makes it back alive. Eddie gets a new dog to love, even though he has a whole ass kid that Sid just left alone in Missouri, but I guess their plan is to go on the run. So there is room for a sequel more focused on David and Eddie, but not exactly sure how they'd get that back into the bear storyline, but damn, I love their dynamic. It was so good. I really like Alden Ehrenreich. I even liked him as Han Solo, but I think he's a genuinely really good actor. But that's pretty much it for Cocaine Bear. Let me know what you guys thought down below. Do you think I'm nitpicking a little bit, or do you agree that it's just a little bit too scattered in a way that doesn't enhance the natural chaos baked into the premise? Do you also feel that this was just so close to being something great? Let me know down below, but thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. We're mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.